II was a Catholic. They were afraid that a Catholic dynasty was going to go into a second generation, so they made up a story, in essence, that somebody had smuggled the prince that Queen Mary had just given birth to into her chamber in a warming pan, which if you've ever seen a warming pan, it can't fit an infant. At least I don't think so, not a very healthy one. So from then on, people had to sit in the room and literally watch the Queen give birth. I'm sure it was just wonderful for the Queen. But he was the last person that happened to. Victoria and Albert were determined, absolutely determined, that he was going to be as completely unlike his Hanoverian ancestors, the Georges, George 1, 2, 3, and 4, as possible. The Georges, in the mind really of Prince Albert, not of Queen Victoria as much, were lecherous, kind of creepy old men that you wanted to stay away from and you didn't want showing up, and certainly in their mind brought the British monarchy to the point of extinction. I don't know how much I agree with that, but that was what Victoria and Albert thought. So they decided that Edward was going to be as unlike them as possible and made to emulate Prince Albert in every conceivable way, because in the mind of Queen Victoria, he could do no wrong. And it worked well with the sister, the firstborn, Victoria, Empress Frederick, but not with him. He was not unintelligent. He just wasn't particularly bookish. He'd rather be outside. He'd rather be doing anything else, literally anything else, than studying. Not unlike some students I've had. But unlike some students who have had to stay here, his tutors found him difficult to teach. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert eventually decided that the educational plan they had him on was counterproductive, and the educational plan was like 12-hour days. So like really not so great for a boy growing up to keep his attention for that span of time. Again, worked well with the Empress Frederick, not so much with them. So they wouldn't admit defeat, his parents. They would not admit defeat yet. They still had him for a few more years, so they found other ways in which to educate him. They sent him, well, they brought him along to Paris on a state visit with the Emperor Napoleon III in August 1855. They took a tour of the European continent in 1857. Edward found that to be a real drag because, as per his father, it was for purposes of study, not, what a boy of 16, 17 wants to hear. And finally, they gave up efforts to force him, quote, into his father's cast of mind when Edward turned 17 and they lost control of him and his future. So he was frustrated, of course he was, because he wasn't allowed anything to do with the governance of his realm, or his future realm, I should say. And his long wait for the throne was marked by a myriad of frustrations, some of which were of his own making. Young man going out into the world, of course, you're going to make mistakes. Others, most really, were not. I think this probably speaks well to his character. He wanted to join the army. His parents eventually allowed him. He was very upset when he was made a lieutenant colonel and he didn't have to sit for the examination. Didn't want to just hand it to him. His education also was supposed to be completed at Oxford and then at Cambridge for prestigious universities. Prince Albert would not let him live in the college, get the full college experience. Even back then, that was a frustration. This is his eventual wife, Princess Alexandra, Queen Alexandra, as she became, of Denmark. She was not a frustration. but the engagement had to be postponed because of the death of Prince Albert on December 14th, 1861.